as on date this year, I read 60 books. I love keeping metrics.
Wow.
I'm currently reading 6 books in parallel, and I've abandoned 5 books this year. I started abandoning books the last couple of years because before that, I had a thing that if I start something, I have to finish, and I used to trudge things through. I was lucky to have met Divakar during the pandemic. Of course, we have met before, but during pandemic, we got together and started a book review club on Zoom, which continues to run. And each one we were reviewing in our own way until Divakar came up with a grid and said, let's use this grid to standardize. And we continue to use that to a large extent. After we speak about the books, I'll show you the last 4 years of data. So out of the 60 books this year, about 14 books I have given 5 on 5. 5 is the maximum rating. 1 book on 4.5, 10 books on 4, and the rest fall in 3, 3.5, etc. The book that I would definitely speak about is The Richest Man in Babylon by George S. Clason. It's so old that it's off patent. It is freely available. But I loved it that I bought 20 copies and distributed it to my managers, to my daughters, and a couple of my well-wishers, especially in the younger age. It talks more about savings and uses fables to bring about a change. And I love fables. I love Bob Burke's book, where you teach the moral through stories. That is how we grow up. So you might ask me, what relevance does it have in business or work? And having been an entrepreneur for a long time, it's all mixed up. So it's the company makes money, I make more money. The company doesn't, then I don't. Of course, I have various other investments. But The Richest Man in Babylon was a book that I read in January this year that I continue to speak about. It was referred to me by one of the other book lovers. Other than that, I dabble across genres, and the one that I love is The Great Train Journey by Ruskin Bond. An old book, but it takes us back. We will definitely relate to the second class window open transport and how that journey we all still yearn for. I'm hoping to do it, but with a pillow for my butt. Other than that, the only other book that I would recommend is, that's another habit I learned from Divakar, to reread old books. And every time you read a book, you are more matured, you are at a different point. And that is the book I also reviewed today morning. It's he's written 3 books, and I would recommend all 3 books. Steal Like an Artist, Do Your Work and Show Your Work. He's an author I fell in love with in 2014, April, in Singapore. And at that point, Singapore is so expensive for books. It was at $40, and being a bootstrap entrepreneur, that was a bit too much. So I waited 2 years for the Indian print and then bought all the copies. I bought multiple copies. Some copies I have gifted, some have been stolen from me lovingly, and I keep buying that every year. But Show Your Work is, for this context, Suku and gang, Tiny Magic has to come out with a book like Show Your Work. So if you have not read it, you should. It's just got 10 points, but so beautifully spoken about that I'm buying a few more copies as the New Year gift for my designer, copywriter, and all the folks, with the request saying next year, let's copy it, because he recommends the style, and come up with our own book next year. So these are some of the books that I love searching for the lesser known authors. So the popular ones, yes, I have read The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, The Referable Speaker by Andrew Davis. Yeah. But I keep going back to the lesser known authors, because there are phenomenal gems out there, and it helps knowing Notion Press as a publisher very well, because anytime they find different quirky books, they mark a copy over to me so I can pick it up. So that's me. In terms of the joke for this year was, I travel every a month. And my wife used to buy a book and give it, so that I'm still a physical person, even though I have a Kindle. And she got a book called For for light reading called Snakes in the Ganga, and I got the book and it was this big. It's like an actual check-in book, which I've not got around to even lifting. I can use it for dumbbell, but it is there in the library. So we didn't realize. She normally gets me paperback small books, but this was hardbound and really big. So that's the one funny disaster for the year. And I still haven't got around to reading the book. So that's.
You also written several books, right, Praveen? Did you write any this year?
This year I wrote a couple. So I had Por Murakam, a Tamil translation that came, and Combat Culture, which is marketing lessons from Krav Maga. So those two books came out this year.
And what makes you such a prolific reader? I think I am a prolific reader, but I don't quite read 60 books a year.
He's giving me a complex, Sukumar. 60 books.
No, I surround myself with books, Sukumar, because the more I read, the better I can write. The better it makes me. I'm an active reader. If it is my business book, my daughter doesn't touch. My daughter is a bit like you, Sukumar, that the book has to be pristine. It cannot even be folded or kept anyway. But some of my business books I do underline in pencil. But thankfully with Apple now I just take a picture, it converts into text, and I have a notepad for that.
Yeah.
But the more I read, the more creative I am. So.
Interesting. Thank you.
My favorite book. I don't think they are necessarily last year, but generally I used to read almost a book a week kind of thing, but now it's reduced quite a bit. I think this year probably I read maybe 10 books or something. And I also multitask, like, I read one book and read another book and read another book, because I heard or read from Naval Ravikant is that every book has certain essential characters or nature to it, and they give you that fairly early, and then you don't have to read it further unless you want to drill down on particular aspect of it. So I didn't feel so guilty kind of thing. But I'll go in things that stick out in my mind. One of my favorite books is The Prize by Irving Wallace. I read it sometimes in 1973 or something, or maybe even earlier, 1971, 72. And Irving Wallace books, I just love all of them. Or document, and he has his knack. My dad suggested that book, and it didn't achieve anything. He probably thought that I'll become a Nobel laureate by reading a book. I was nowhere near that. So he pushed me into physics. I bounced off and went into engineering. So I think there was a man who was like very disappointed in life. He was a physics buff. He knew about Narlikar. Now I'm reading so much about physics, and he knew many of these, Immanuel Kant, all these kinds of things, and that is one. So it didn't directly give me anything, but it was a big source of, it's a fiction, but it was a big source of inspiration. The next book, not necessarily in sequence, but I read is it's called Ringworld, and I love science fiction. And Ringworld is a great book to follow, like Neutron Star. And the reason is there is a race called Puppeteers, and they commission a guy and to go to the Neutron Star, which is somewhere in the center of the galaxy or something. And then he sees it exploding. The previous mission failed because they died. Nobody came back. So these guys send him, and then he talks about it. And then, by the time he is back, they pay him and all that. Right at the beginning, his money was deposited, but they all disappeared as a race. And then they went and built this thing called Ringworld. They moved an entire world there. They thought it took me a long time to get the grips of how can a world be moved, because to me world is, like some elliptoid kind of thing, and so that is, but turns out to be very different. It's actually a ring with the walls and different civilizations live there, kind of thing. That when I read books, sometimes I write down some of the new concepts that I've never heard of before. So, and that gives me some thrill. So Arthur C. Clarke's series of essays, I think that was in '67. There is something called a solar sail, and today it's a project in the US. He has suggested solar sail as a way of exploring, like intergalactic voyages kind of stuff with no energy. Okay, so I'll leave a whole bunch of those books behind. Ringgold as a series, but after some time it falls apart and like not that great. And Arthur C. Clarke and Asimov are again two of my favorites. I'm not going to describe any of them because laws of robotics everybody knows, and pretty much. About 2-3 years ago, I was in a hotel room and I had 2 days because it's a weekend, and then I started walking, and I read this book called "This Will Change Your Life." Okay. I didn't believe the title. I said, "What can change my life? My life is my life." And then it is a series of 100 essays, and it is. Then that's the other thing I started doing once Kindle came. I started marking up, and then I take the markups, and then I annotate them with my own comments, kind of thing. It is the most liked book among mine in Goodreads. So I normally have these book notes, and then when I feel appropriate, I put it there. But the interesting thing about these 100, these things will change your life, is I discovered John Brockman. Then I found out that he is like this edge author who asks one question every year to the luminaries in the industry. He says, "What is your biggest fear?" There is a series, and they're all very, and then each one is written by a different, the answer is given by different people. He compiled the answers and started giving this. And then I think I'm going on too much, but a short history of nearly everything. Bill Bryson. I read it 3 times. Yeah, I read it like 3 times. I read it on the treadmill before the iPad kind of came about. I read it physically, and then I read it in audio, kind of thing. That's fabulous. I don't remember any of it, but I remember the opening sentence. If you're reading this book, you don't know how lucky you are. So many things have to happen right for you to be able to hold a book like this and read it. And that stuck with me. Like, he said, "Wow, this is amazing," kind of thing. And of course, the more practical ones are The Magic of Thinking Big by Richard Schwartz. That is a book that whenever I could find people, younger people, I used to buy a bunch of them, and like Praveen, you used to do, I used to give it to them. And they all like Randall Schwartz or Richard Schwartz. I'm bad with names. So I used to give it. And of course, the book on marketing is, what is that? Seminal book on marketing. This guy was in, what is, I have it here.
Seth Godin.
No, not say, even before Seth Godin, Crossing the Chasm.
Yeah.
So before that, I had no idea what marketing was. Even now, I don't have any idea what marketing is. But he made it very clear, the process where of failures, and he has this bell curve and gaps, and it's like amazing. That I probably read 2-3 times, and I use some of these ideas. Ash Maurya's Lean Startups. I didn't read the regular Lean by Eric Rice, but that is one. And these are all things that stuck. And then I went to a 1 minute manage, 1 minute series, 1 minute manager, 1 minute salesperson. They're little too kind of short and means 1 minute salesperson. I didn't like that much. But I liked a 1 minute entrepreneur. So I read a bunch of books on entrepreneurship and this. And now it's what's something I think Praveen, take 100 foundation books and read them every year. Every year. And I said, oh, if I do that, then I won't have time for any new books. So, but I may not. I've been revisiting books like once in like 5 years or 10 years. But this is a great advice. I think it's. But the key is foundation books. So I started looking for what is a foundation book, and I'm on search and like Feynman's lecture series, 3 books, and you can't get them in Indian version kind of thing. So on physics and stuff like that. So that's my story.
Thank you.
So okay, this year I mean I used to be kind of reading a lot of books, and this year this count is like very less. Uh, and
But you read every day 20 pages or something. Like
I
that.
do that, Sukumar. I mean, but that just kind of mixes articles and mix of many things. It's not just books alone. But I think this year I also got sometimes like இது படிக்கணுமா, it has to like do I have to just go to all இவ்வளவு படிப்பா படிக்கிற மாதிரி. So that has come. So I just keep like some books away, and then something new comes in. And but interestingly, I think the beginning of the year or somewhere around April, May, Sanjay mentioned about one book called I think Polarity Management. I mean, I just got interested in I think Barry Johnson. I think that's the name of the author. But அது பார்த்தீங்கன்னா பேப்பர் பேக் காப்பியை வந்து some 3,500 or something இருந்ததுங்க. So I said, okay, let me find something on the same topic. Then I got into some other book called this Navigating Polarities by Brian Emerson. I think that's another book which was available in Kindle. So that I immediately ordered it. It has gone into my digital Sundoku. So I have not read that too. Well, I got another book called A Beautiful Constraint, which is like again about the transformation. I mean, it was like very colorful, and it was easy to read. Kind of flip the pages, and you were able to go through those pages very easily. They given a lot of examples. Actually, that I completed. I read that book completely. It's a very wonderful book in terms of the examples, which we can easily relate to. It's called A Beautiful Constraint. The author, that Adam Morgan and Mark Barden, I think. Yeah, that's they are the author, Mark Barden. So that's a book I would definitely recommend for you all to. If you have not read that, I think that's a wonderful book. Sukma, that talks about our there are things that come as like the constraint, and where we set this extreme objective from our perspective,
Yeah.
and how you make a constraint beautiful. That's the theme of this book. So I mean, you take a constraint, make it beautiful, come out with the solution, and then create abundance using that solution. So that's kind of the whole theme the book is about. And it has what I have done is that there was a small program that I was asked to do on entrepreneurial mindset. Okay, so I used the concept that I've learned from this book. That's why this book is kind of still in my mind. So I used a lot of concepts from this, and then I've taken these examples how people can actually turn into an entrepreneur, and then how you have to. I mean, for an entrepreneur, like more than all other mindsets, I mean, you have to just keep looking for these kind of constraints, and instead of leaving them, instead of going after something that is established and replicating that, for scaling up this opportunity. So this is a very novel approach. So I created a small program and then presented it for one of the IT companies. It was just a one-day program, so it was kind of well received also. So this book is very, very, very nice book that I would definitely recommend.
Sanjay had referred it to me.
I sent you that PPT also. It's based on that.
Yeah, Sanjay has sent me a summary of it also.
Anbu, this is a heavy book, right? It takes time to download on Kindle. It's full of art and is it
Correct.
the same book?
Yeah, it's the same one. Yes. But it's a very nice one. Definitely, we can. A lot of examples, so which we can. I mean, it's not dense as in like our this one. So it will be
Design.
easy to. Yeah. But the design book is like really good, Praveen. I mean, I'm kind of I'm listening to it. It's not like I'm reading it, so it's like little easier for me, right? So. Yeah, sometimes I kind of doze off, but I just go rewind and then go back to this one, because the moment I see 10 minutes in Audible, then I said, okay, 10 minutes I can withstand. So I just go through that. Then if I have energy for the next 10 minutes, I go through it. So that way, I think I'm almost into the errors now. So the types of errors in this month's book.
I'll send across a PPT summary I created on the
thank you.
beautiful constraint book. Just a few slides I sent across to Sumar, in a conversation we were having about work. Give you an idea of quickly what it's a good book.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I was looking through how many books I bought just to.
Bought to read ratio.
Let's not go there.
So, I bought probably looks like 20 books or so, around that number. Well, I buy all my books on the Kindle. If it's not available on the Kindle only, I buy the hard copy. That's kind of what I'm used to. So I go to Amazon and just see all my orders. It's easy to see what I bought. Interestingly, I probably read. Looks like I only read maybe 2 or 3 of them, which is an interesting. When I'm buying these books, but and I went through like all the books I bought. Like, why did I buy? Why did I not read, etc. But interestingly, I read some books that I bought the previous years, this year also. So I have there's 2 or 3 books that I'll mention which come to mind. One is I kind of I'm a convert to design from software engineering over the last 10-12 years. Thanks to Sukumar, stumbled upon this thing called design and design thinking, and I've been in love with it, and been reading up a lot, practicing a lot about it. But interestingly, that has given way to my interest in marketing, because it seems like design and marketing are very closely related. So I've gotten very interested in marketing, /sales maybe, but more importantly in marketing. So 2 things. One thing I figured was one big change that I struggled to make, as I was moving into design, and this is how it relates to marketing, is this idea of moving from the product to the customer, right? That lens, basically. The product is all about the feature and the technology and whatnot. That's what I was used to when I was building, or sort of working on software, building software, etc. And then I realized that the missing piece of the puzzle was the other side, right? Which was really the customer world. And design was all about that world. And how do you understand that? And how do you design, hence, import that into the design and engineering of products and services? And 2 books that so I find that the switch is the hardest switch to make, actually, to move from this mindset shift. Seems to be very hard. And I'm in the sort of I'm trying hard to make that shift as well. I'm also helping others make that shift as well. So I constantly find myself looking for ways to articulate this, frame this, all of that stuff. And in that context, I found two books very helpful. One was a book called The Value Mix by I'll give you the 1 second. I'll just tell you. I forget the name of the author. So the value mix is all about finding the intersection between your and your proposition, your value proposition, right? And so it's a very short read, but it's a very good book in the sense that it talks to how you should think about it. What are the elements of a value proposition that you should think about in very simple way that you can understand, right? Sort of a person who's not trained in marketing would understand, like somebody like myself. So that is one book that I found very interesting and very useful. I used it. In fact, I used it in one of the workshops. Sukumar, this was the one we did with Flextronics. That workshop we had used it because they were struggling with a similar problem. It's another thing that did not get what I was trying to say. This was basically the same issue that I was noticing, right? That people were stuck. What I found was we are so full of ourselves that we don't have space for the other. Or the customer or the other, and that is a problem, because if you have that mindset, you can never understand the other. If you don't understand the other, you cannot market, you cannot influence. It seems to be like that to me. So anyway, that was one book. The other book was a book. It's not a very well-known author. I don't know how I stumbled upon it, but I found I'm really good. I found it really, really good. And this is called it's called Sell Futures, Not Features, along the same theme, by Michael Kellen. And this is a guy who's kind of started off going door to door selling, cable subscriptions in England. That was in his teenage years. So, and he's, I think he runs an agency or something like that now. But I found the whole framing, and he's sort of like a expert copyright who talks on that understanding of your value proposition into copy, right? That how do you communicate that? How do you tell that story of because his point was you're not selling features, you're selling futures, right? So how do you tell what people are buying, or a future that they're waiting to get to? Now, how do you describe that future? How do you get them to pay attention to what you're saying? So it was a lot about, how do you translate that understanding you have into copy? Because I'm fascinated with copywriting. I think it's if you want to be a good marketer, you have to write good copy. And I'm not great at writing. My vocabulary is not very good. So I'm trying to sort of work hard at developing the skill. And interestingly, I've tried, Sukumar, to your question, where did you apply it? The one that we did with for that tech explainer thing, the thing that what do you get after? That was basically applying some of the learnings I had from that book. And interestingly, now I'm using some of those heuristics or rules that he talks about with Gen AI. So I'm using Gen AI to generate the stuff, but using it, some of the things learned from that book, because without that, I wouldn't know what are the expert rules, right? So to speak. So I kind of downloaded or copied some of those expert rules from that book. And it seems to work. I also do volunteering with the Art of Living. I've been associated with the Art of Living for 15 years now. And one of the challenges is that, the marketing is completely volunteer driven. It's word of mouth marketing. So there's no paid marketing, right? Very little paid marketing, basically. Like we run some, Facebook campaigns and Google campaigns and that. And one of the struggles is that our marketing is not so great. Yeah, the product is very good, the delivery is very good, but marketing is not good. So I'm also helping the Art of Living sort of make the shift, because same problem I see, right? Like, we talk a lot about the product and all of that stuff. We talk very little about the people that we are targeting and their problems and their world, because unless they don't care about, they don't know what, for example, if I told you, Sudarshan Kriya is there, what does that mean, right? So if to a person, that means nothing. So how do you translate that feature into something that somebody can relate with? So I'm helping. So I'm using some of those things with, as I volunteer, I'm using that with the Art of Living as well. So one more book, and it was actually recommended by Anbu, is a book that I'm actually, like I said, I am fascinated with design. And this book was called Experiencing Design. And it talks about a very different, so it talks about the journey of an innovator, right? The mindset shift that you need to make, rather than the process of design thinking or innovation itself, which I find very fascinating, because in our work, we often try to get the people to change their mindsets as they engage in a process of innovation. Of course, we try to deliver outcomes as well, but we try to look for because the early signs of momentum are actually not the outcome. It's actually the shifts in mindset that you see in people. The lagging indicator is the great outcome that you get. If you don't get the leading indicators, which is the mindset shifts, chances are you're not going to make it to those outcomes. So I find that was very, very refreshing. Although I've read a lot of book on design thinking, I find this very different, because it talks about the inner journey of the sort of the mindset shifts and the signals, and how do you actually measure that. I found that to be very, very nice, actually. Yeah. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Sanjay. Very nice.
When you're saying all of Sanjay don't have an Indian price on Kindle.
All very expensive, Sanjay. It's a dollar pricing. So unless the author specifically asks the publisher, they don't put it on Amazon.in. So, for example,
Are you looking at Apple? You're looking at your phone or?
No, I'm on the system. I'm looking at Amazon.in.
It should be there.
So the value mix is there. Praveen. Yeah.
It is there, but it is priced at $9.49 for Kindle.
Which book is this?
Yeah.
Experiencing
Yeah.
this.
The value mix by a French guy. I don't want to pronounce his name.
Yeah.
So we all don't know French, Praveen. So நீங்க சொல்றதா.
அப்பா ஆமா. Gric de Terne. அவர்தானே சஞ்சய்? Same. அன்பு உங்களுக்கு பிரெஞ்சு தெரியாதுன்னா எனக்கு பிரெஞ்சு தெரியும்.
Yeah, so that's
Praveen, the French people are at your door to wring your neck for that pronunciation.
Lovely, Sanjay.
Yeah, very good, Sanjay. Well, a couple of comments. You said not features but futures. It sounds really good, but that's a very different sell than this book that I read, which is like tiny book. It's oriented towards book authors. Said write useful books, and the right useful book is pick one guy. Okay, one person. Visualize this person. Pick one problem that this person is playing. Build a product that they can use. Okay, and which is exactly the opposite. This obviously you are talking about corporate sell and that kind of thing. So that is one. And second thing is kind of off the chart here. My daughter used to work in Microsoft for about 15 years. Then she left and she wanted to try, went to Uber. And then she left Uber, came back to Microsoft for various reasons. And she switched from marketing. She felt that she saturated in marketing. She came back and became a group product director for AI, of course. And then we have these long conversations as to what it is. And I think somewhere I read that the product, you want to call it whatever you want, like a owner, because that space is muddy. Is the CEO of a mini company inside a larger company. They have to do everything that a product manager does, except that they're doing it for this little product inside the company. They're competing. Their competition can be internal, external, all that kind of stuff. And I found that to be really fascinating in terms of doing it. So for my own thing is that build thinking something that is easy to build, prove the value proposition as quickly as you can, and watch them. So I'm talking about 3 to 6 months time period kind of thing. So and that product can be a book. The product can be. Do you know that some of the best books are series of lectures or series of blog posts combined together to the extent that there are also some student took the notes and this guy borrowed all that stuff and put it out, and it like not well thought through books or something like that. So I found those kinds of trends. You're right. I think if you cannot write, you are at a big disadvantage. Product actually, that if you think a little bit more abstractly, it's not just writing; it's abstraction, and you need to be able to give your thoughts in very succinct way, and you need to. I'm not talking about pitches, one-line pitches. I'm talking about when the person sees, say, "Wow, I want that product." So that is.
So we have about 5 minutes, 4 minutes. So let me get through my thing. I can recommend a lot of stuff. Yeah. So, but I want to talk about one which people keep asking me. I think the idea is this. I have a lot of big problems in my head. At least maybe 15, 20 I have at any given time. So I am looking for books to read that. But one enduring problem in my head has always been, why do corporates struggle so much with change? And I have been through many such initiatives myself. I have a large company. I mean, this is true of small companies also. Even in a tiny magic change is difficult. But large companies, the problem is just exponentially bigger. I always wonder why is this hard, and a lot of work that I did is trying to solve this problem at scale, right? So I would recommend this book called The Systems Bible. I may get the name wrong. It's John Gall. It's a book from the 70s, and he founded a field called systemantics. So I am big on systems thinking, thanks to Peter Senge's landmark book, The Fifth Discipline, which I hold in my mind as the greatest book ever written in management. So systems thinking is this. Now, yeah, I will give you just one example from this Gall's book. It goes actually now by Gall's law. A complex system can never be designed as such and built. Cannot be done. So he gives several examples, but I will give you one that stuck in my head. You might have all heard of the Aswan Dam in Egypt. So what happened was, this was built by Anwar Sadat, right? One of the famous Egyptian prime ministers, presidents, whatever. The idea behind the dam is what? I will store the water from the Nile when it floods, and I will make the irrigation better, all of that. And I will generate electricity through that hydroelectric project. It turns out that at the end of the project, the amount of electricity Aswan Dam generates is barely enough to run the pumps now to irrigate those same fields that Nile was already irrigating very easily. So because they have stopped the water and dammed it, now no longer water flows through the Nile as much as used to. Now they have to pump groundwater. For that they need electricity and pumps, which is now supplied by this big hydroelectric project. So essentially, you have, this is the sort of equivalent of shifting the deck chairs on the Titanic. Right? So he gives so many examples, and he says John F. Kennedy takes over as president, and he's looking for the presidential hotline. Apparently, it's a red color telephone. That went missing. Nobody knows where that phone was. So he's saying that you cannot actually orchestrate and build complex systems. And I've seen this, and the most recent example that has come to my mind is ChatGPT. If you think about it, it works on a very simple principle. It can predict the next word. That's all it can do. With that, the whole magic that is unfolding in front of us, a little bit more complicated than that. But for the purpose of this discussion, you can say, so if you look at the world's complex system, they all boil down to very simple rules. This is a groundbreaking book. It is not an easy book to read. And Amazon, in their infinite wisdom, classified it in the humor category. Because he writes quite humorously. So it's just a fun book to read. I would urge all of you to read it. That's all I have. So that brings us to the end of this call. Any closing comments? Anything? Do we continue the book? Let's read that Don Norman.
Okay, sure.
Dan Norman's book. I think it's a very important book to read and assimilate.
Very nice.
We'll make the next attempt.
Yes, yes. Arrears. Arrear number 1.
Arrears.
Sanjay, I can recommend a bunch of
marketing books.
Send them across in the WhatsApp.
Yeah, please, Praveen. Yeah, that'll be wonderful.
Okay, so thank you all. Happy New Year. Happy
New Year.
holidays.
Thank you.
See you on the next call. Thank you. Bye-bye.